Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I've been torn as to what to cover tonight, or for today, this morning. To continue on with the iconic weapons, hoping that we get more and more buy-in, or to continue down something else that I wanted to talk about. And I think I'm going to go on that latter one. Now, I've talked about new shooters here and there, and there's some statistics that have been floating around that I was kind of really shocked at. One of them I heard from multiple sources. The Truth About Guns, Tim Pool had some stuff about it. Multiple people had been talking about this stat, and it said 62% or 61%, one of those two numbers, of new gun sales in the last 2 years were to brand new shooters. That means there's a lot of us new guys, or a lot of new guys out there in the 2A community that never have been there before. So this is where my advocacy for doing something is going to take effect, twofold. Take a new shooter out. I've said that multiple times. But they need to be around people that they can trust, who are safe, and are advocates for the 2A, so that you can pass that knowledge on to them. Second, with all this stuff going on, it's happened to me multiple times, as I am a de facto gun guy for some people. And others, I'm just a guy that knows some things about guns. So I've helped a lot of shooters in the last 3 years to 5 years, and I mentioned this before, shop for new guns. Now, if you're new to the shooting sports or new to the 2A community, welcome. The other thing I would say to that is practice, train, ask questions. Don't take the gun counter dude, boomer dude, as gospel. Talk to other shooters, because if you take the gospel from the boomer dude behind the counter, and I say boomer if he's an older gentleman. If he's a younger gentleman, now here's the difference. There's a lot of experience there, but more often than not, the boomer guys fall into this category of trying to get new shooters into things like 22s, or they want to get them into revolvers, double action revolvers. And there's some honest conversations around that about, yes, these are reliable. However, if they do fail, what are you going to have to do? Yes, I understand that 22 can be used for self-defense, but should it? Those type of things. Also, with the state of the world that's going, there's a lot of people getting into this because they're seeing possible without rule of law situations, especially after the Summer of Love and the riots in Wisconsin, where they actually said we cannot respond to any other calls for service. So that means effectively you are on your own. That sparked a gun buy by brand new people in California. During the COVID crisis, there were lines out the door. There was some debate about with the government about seeing that as an essential service. It is, it was, it always has been. The defense of your person is a thing. But those conversations about, for a new shooter, is a 12-gauge pump action the best idea for someone who has never shot a gun in their life? Now, some boomer dudes would tell you, hell yeah, all you need to do is hear that racking of that slide, and that scares everyone off. I'm going to tell you that is absolutely false. Number one, as a new shooter that you're going to get used to, something is called recoil. When you push a projectile or multiple projectiles out the front end of something, the combustion of the propellants causes that to push out the front, right? But for everything in physics, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So what you're going to feel is the gun buck back towards you. If it's a rifle or a pistol, it's going to buck in your hand. That's why we're trying to teach you as new shooters how to hold the gun correctly. The worst thing that you can do if you're introducing new shooters is give them something that will blow their shoulder off. And what I mean by that is just brutal with recoil, because you don't want to scare them. The next thing is, you don't want to do that for safety reasons. They've shown those on YouTube, and there's been some that have won Darwin Awards, unfortunately, where someone had the bright idea of putting like a 500 Smith & Wesson in someone's hands who's never shot a gun in their entire life. And sadly, they ended up killing themselves because they fired the gun. The recoil was so massive and strong that the gun recoiled back, and to push the recoil or counteract the recoil, they pulled the trigger, but the barrel was facing them. Let's not have any of those for new shooters. Give them the best experience possible. You know, take them to the range a couple of times. Talk to them before you take them to the range. Find out what they like, what their expectations are. Okay? Because it's great to take a brand new shooter out with a 22, but if they're expecting a lot more show, so to speak, it's a good gun to start with to see how they handle recoil, even though there's not much, if any, with a 22, depending upon the gun. I've shot some guns, 22s, that actually have a little tiny bit of recoil. You can feel the gun jump. That's it. That's really tiny chipmunk rifles. But teach them how to shoot a caliber that's going to do the job they want to do. If they're just wanting to learn how to shoot, they're not ready to buy a gun yet, see if they can splurge for some ammo with you. If you can't afford just to buy the ammo outright. This is one of those responsibilities as a new shooter, or as someone who's seasoned as a shooter, I should say, that you have. You have to be able to teach people how to use a weapon correctly, because we don't want to have any of those stupid Darwin Award moments. We don't want to have an accident with someone new to the sport who seems to be a little motivated, but not, let's just say, ignorant is the best way to put it. That's why we give them guns, or we don't give them, we show them how to use the guns either they have, or the ones that could possibly be in their wheelhouse of what they're looking for. Case in point, I've had a young man who just recently turned 21. He came to me, I've taken him out shooting a couple different times. He's decided, with the way of the world right now, that it's time for him to get his first self-defense pistol. He's legal in the state of New Mexico, so I took him out shooting with a Glock 19, a Glock 30, because he was interested in a 45, a 1911, and a Sig Sauer 9mm P229. All of them are self-defense. All of them show him kind of what he's been looking at anyway, from what he's telling me. So I teach this young man how to hold the pistol correctly. He's done it before with me, but he's shooting this gun, and he decides. So he gets his pistol. We go shopping. We go to the place, to Sportsman's in this case, and he says, what do I do? And I said, the first thing you want to do is try out the pistols to see how they fit in your hand. And he says, well, I'm already deciding that, having done my research I want to look at the Glocks. So he looks more at the Glock 19 like I have, and then he looks at a Glock 17. He decides on a Glock 17. Now, I'm not doing any paperwork. There's no straw purchasing here. All I did was help answer questions just like the gun counter guys try to do. But a lot of times the gun counter guys, while they're in the know, they're not always the best one to ask. Now, I say that with some reservations. I've known a lot of gun counter guys, and a lot of them are very knowledgeable and very willing to help new shooters and any shooter. Case in point, anyone at East Main Trade and Pawn? Yeah, there's one guy, and that's in Farmington, New Mexico. That's anyone I've ever talked to in there seems to know a lot about guns. However, when it comes to brand new shooters, there's some older gentlemen that work in there that probably should steer them towards semi-automatic pistols that are easier, like the Smith & Wesson EZ type things, so that they can manipulate the slide. And I say that because we live in 2022. It is the best idea to give them the most modern tool for the job because it's efficient. And nowadays, they've made guns for users that can't manipulate a slide as easily as, say, I can. Had another shooter determined he wanted a rifle. And he wanted a rifle for self-defense of his home, and for whatever reason, because he's an American. We go shopping. Again, we go for a rifle. We only went to East Main. There, he decides he wants an AR-15. Now, before he drops $1,000+, because that's the type of gun he was looking at, was a higher end AR-15. He wanted to shoot one. So I took him out and walked him through the basics of what it does, how it works. He shot it. He went and purchased his rifle. What he noticed, though, was that the bare bones rifle he was looking at for $1,100 didn't have optics, came with one magazine or two, a little cleaning kit thing I think it did, and that was it. Where my rifle probably costs a lot more than that over time because I've upgraded it as I could afford it. So he ended up going with a little bit less expensive rifle so he could buy a quality optic. He got 10 magazines and he got 250 rounds of ammunition. All total, about the same amount he was going to spend for the main big bang gun that he was going to buy. Now, why do we do this? It's because of that experience. The gun guys are going to try, the gun counter guys are going to try to upsell. But the reason why they do that is twofold. One, it's helping the end user. Two, is it makes their bottom line better by selling more accessories. Now, I wasn't doing that. I just simply said, if you're going to buy this, you need to buy these type of things to support what you're buying. So he ended up buying a sling and then all the stuff that you would need to make your rifle work for you. Now, I've had females do the same thing with pistols. And one of the first ones that I've ever taken shopping for a pistol, or a gun, period, was she had heard 12 gauge, because that's what everybody had said. Her family, everything. Now, when we went shopping, I showed her how big they were. We walked through the stuff of what they do. She then promptly decides that probably a pistol would probably be more her speed, but she still wants to take a 12 gauge when we finally go to the range and shoot.